Hello, Annie. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks. Nice to see you again.
You and I talked a couple of months ago. I had you on the show, and you run a business. You've had businesses. You're an entrepreneur. You're a woman in our community, and we get to talking sometimes off camera in our regular life, and these different subjects come up. And recently, we were talking about the seasons in business and also seasons in life. So I want to welcome you back here, and you always have such great insight. So I think this will be a really fun conversation and hopefully insightful to the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. When we talk about the seasons in business, that doesn't necessarily line up with the seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall, but they do apply to business, even if they're not the same time as the climate description of a season.
Right. And I think that let's just do an overview of that. So the idea is when we look at the seasons, the winter is a dormant time where everything shuts down. The seeds are quiet. They're storing their energy up to spring forth in the spring, right? And then the spring is this really growing time where things are producing, things are coming up, and they need to be tended. They need to be watered, fertilized, whatever. And then the summer tends to be the season of harvest and into the fall. But then the fall, again, you have that shift down into the dormancy of the winter. So when we think of seasons like that and we think of business, it's sometimes counterintuitive to think of seasons with business. And the reason why is because we have such a drive for productivity that we feel that we need to be productive every single day. And we always need to be in this harvest. But you can't, and this is how people burn out. You can't be in the harvest all the time. You have to go dormant. You have to take time to fertilize and prune and do this stuff. So sometimes when you change your thought about your business to a seasonal approach and when is your dormancy time going to be? When is your spring going to be? It's easier than thinking about the go of being in what I would call harvest every single day. So
Yeah, and I was reading something the other day, Alex Hermosi, I follow him on Instagram, and he was talking about rest days and how he doesn't have set days of the week that he works. I mean, if we're going to break it down even further into what a week looks like or a day looks like, but if you're talking about in terms of a week, he said, I don't have set days of the week that I work. He said, I base it on my sleep. Now, he's an entrepreneur. He sets it on schedule and all of those things. Not everyone has that option. But the idea is that if he has some good sleep, then the next day he's super productive. And he says, I'm not wasting that good night's sleep on a rest day.
Right.
I rest when I need to rest.
Yeah. And you brought up that's such a good point, but you brought up another point in there that I want to talk about is there's this big picture seasonality. Mm-hmm. Then there's a micro seasonality where maybe it's in a week, maybe it's even in a day, where sometimes it's actually better to go dormant. It's better to take a day off because you're going to be more productive and so when we get behind, when we get overwhelmed, we think there's no way I could take time off. There's no way I could take a rest day, where sometimes that is the crucial part of what you do. And to this person you're talking about, that's what they do. They're like, well, if I didn't get good sleep, I'm not going to be effective. I might as well take a rest day and then be more effective the next day. And it's crucial to be able to name what we need in those moments. And I do think when you are, especially, I think this happens more with new businesses, but I think older businesses can get in this mode too, is you just have this perception that businesses go, and doesn't consider the rest of your life or doesn't consider self-care.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why we burn out.
Well, and it's true too, because I think one of the things that I just said yesterday, and we're recording this on a Monday, so yesterday was Sunday. I pretty much rested all day. And what I was saying is that I'm in the process of building right now. I mean, I have a couple of things that I do in business that are just the things that I do no matter what, like this show. And then I have some things that I'm building. And what I think is true, my eyes water in the morning. Anyway, so what I think is happening too is that I'm looking forward to when I know what that routine looks like.
Right.
I'm looking forward to being out of that building phase and just having that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I might do this, or even what block of hours I spend on certain things in my day, because I'm not real regimented. I'm not good at like, this is what I'm going to do on Monday and this is what I'm doing Tuesday. And You and I are very different that way. Still very productive people, just completely different about our approach. And so what I'm looking forward to is more of kind of what you have in your schedule, where you know where you are each day and you know what you're doing each day. And that comes from the longevity of your business and also your organization skills. And then mine is like, I'm just kind of figuring it out as I go right now. And I think that in a new business in particular, I was also having this conversation with somebody. This is when some people give up because they just can't quite see light at the end of the tunnel quite yet.
You know, we talked about this on a different show, but I want to bring it back up because I think it's so important. Is you just said that we do things, we have a different approach. And what I think is important is that there isn't a right approach. The right approach is that what works for you. So I am somebody, I feel like I said this exact same thing before, but I'm somebody that my most productive time is 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And so I get up early and I get most of my work done at that time. You can find things where people are like, you should get up early. You should do. Nope, you shouldn't get up early if it doesn't work for you. There are other people, I think you do well in the evening, right?
Right.
I turn into a pumpkin. I can't do evening work. So there isn't a right or wrong. And also I am a very much a routine person. I can tell you probably what I'm doing at 9 a.m. on a Monday 5 years from now. You are, that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And I think when we're talking about seasonality, it's understanding, I could name the seasons of my business by dates. Not important. That's just me. You still need to be able to name the seasons of your business by what works for you. So if you wake up, I want to go back to this guy you mentioned before. If you wake up and it's time to winter, it's time to hibernate and rest, then that's the most important thing you do. You're in a building phase right now. And one of the struggles in a building phase in one aspect of your life, one of the problems with a building phase is you still have to remember that you have to go dormant to be able to make that happen. And you have to, so I know I'm kind of all over the place here.
No, I don't think so. I think that you're right. I think that I get what you're saying. And I think we have to look too that the business isn't necessarily, I mean, we look at it in quarters, quarter 1, 2, 3, 4. But if we're looking at even what you're saying about a building phase, maybe it's what I got to look at, or the person building a business or the person maintaining a business might be on burnout as well. They've been doing the same thing for so long, tired of it. But you maybe look at it at a month at a time or a week at a time. Sometimes I'm a day at a time, what needs to be done and what I thought I'd get done. I'm a huge believer in eat the frog. I try to do the hardest thing first, the thing that I dread the most, get it done in the morning. Sometimes, I have a list of things and I'm thinking I'm overwhelmed. I feel defeated before Monday even comes. And then Monday comes and I'm rested and I think that list doesn't look so bad.
Yep.
Let's get after it. Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about what we do when, no matter what type of plan we have for our business, when life happens and we have to learn to pivot.
Yes.
And even take a hiatus. We'll be back in just a moment. We are back talking with Annie LaCroix. We are talking about business and the seasons of business. And one of the things that we left off with is when life happens, things that happen in life that we can't plan for, and we are entrepreneurs, or we are business owners or individual entrepreneurs, we work for ourselves with no team at all, whatever that looks like, or we're an employee and we find it difficult to continue with what we're doing because life happens. And so let's talk about it in terms of entrepreneurship, because I was building a completely different business. I just shared on the show last week about my dad passing away in December, and I was about to launch a project that I'd been working on for like a year. And then when he passed away, what I was going to launch no longer felt like a space that I could be in every single day, because it had to do with patients and caregivers and patient advocacy and navigating a health crisis. And since I'm just trying to recover from my own, I didn't think I'd be much help to others. It's still available to people. I'm just not going to talk about it every single day in my business and market it the way that it needs to be done. So I decided to completely change business. And I know this has happened to people where a tragedy, a loss has happened, and maybe it wasn't what their business was going to be about and they decide to change it, but it changes how we approach things. It changes how we're able to navigate it, whether it's divorce, it's a move, it's a death, whatever it is that comes, these big life events that happen. sometimes you just have to take a hiatus and regroup. Now, obviously, you got to earn a living and you've got to work, and I'm still working on the other things I work on. But what is your thought on that when something comes crashing in that you don't plan for and you still got to get up every day and earn a living, however that looks?
Well, when you talk, I mean, there is the pragmatic part of you need to pay your bills, but and I'll come back to that. But I think I want to say something that I don't think business owners hear a lot. We underestimate the bravery and importance of quitting things.
Yeah.
We think that success is sticking with something and doing something forever and being like, I did this forever. And that slog isn't really, we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't focus on the slog being the measure of success, that we persevered for everything. We never quit. You always hear that quitters never win and winners never quit. No, the most successful people I know when to quit something. So you had a moment, for using you for an example, where you're like, I need to quit this path. And that is, it's not only important, but it's brave, because a lot of people don't, we just have such a emphasis on not quitting stuff.
Yeah.
And so you said hiatus, and hiatus is important, but sometimes quitting is important. So
I think sometimes you have to take a hiatus to know whether you're quitting or you're going to keep going, right?
Absolutely. And you have to know when to pivot. You have to know what's not working for you anymore. So you have to say, can I do this? Is this what I want to be doing every day? And if that feels heavy and that feels weighty, that you're going to do this thing every day, I don't care what it is. You have to look at how you can pivot. So let's take this on a really simplistic level. If I have a business with no crisis, no personal crisis, I just have a business and it's going along, but there's something in my business I hate doing, and so I avoid it. For a lot of people, I find this tends to be bookkeeping, but that's a side note. So people avoid it, and they avoid, you have to go, okay, how do I pivot around this? Do I change my attitude about it? Do I outsource this? Do I do whatever? So that's just an example of being willing to look at, how do I adjust this so that I'm not dreading what I do? But what you're talking about is on a bigger level, is what if I'm burnt out? What if I simply don't have the capacity emotionally at this moment to, like, getting up and doing something feels hard because I'm burdened by a personal thing, but I have to pay my bills, right? So what I would say is recognizing that sometimes you can tend a little bit and you're still tending something, and you don't have to, let me keep using the seasonal analogy. You can make a little teeny tiny garden. You can grow a tomato plant. Right. You don't grow 85 tomato plants.
Right.
Sometimes the way that we get over these personal crises while we're still maintaining a business is to say, not even the frog. Forget the frog in this scenario. Although I'm in your camp of eat the frog, but what can I do today? Can I just get up and do this one thing that I need to do? And that one thing might be, depending on how big the crisis is, the one thing might be getting showered and sitting at your computer, and you don't get anything done.
Right.
But recognizing that you have to honor that, because if you sit and stare at your computer for 8 hours and don't do everything, sure, you can check the box that says I went to work today. But if you didn't accomplish anything, it's going to feel like a bigger sense of failure. Again, I know I said 85 things in there, but
it's good.
Into it.
Yeah. And one of the things I'll say to that is, after my dad passed, I didn't open my laptop for 6 weeks. I just did the things that kept the lights on, so to speak. I did the things in my everyday life that affect my being able to keep the lights on in my house. Mm-hmm. And that's an exaggeration, right? I mean, I can keep the lights on in my house, but I just did the bare bones of what needed to be done. And then I did all the other things that my family needed and that I needed. And I think that's all you can do sometimes. And when you think about a hiatus, and I can give an example. I can see right now on my board a note from Robert Urich, the late actor, and he finally agreed to write the foreword for my first book. I was going to quit on that idea. I was going to quit on getting him to do it. I couldn't get an agent until I got him to do it. And I had to, at one point, just take a hiatus and go, okay, I'm just going to take a couple months off of that and work on this, and I'll come back to it. And when I came back to it with fresh eyes, I had another idea to try to get him to write the foreword. This time he said yes. So a hiatus in my life as as a writer or as a creative, you have to be willing to say, yeah, I got to work on this other thing right now because I'm going to quit everything if I keep focusing on this no, the no's that we get. We know it leads to a yes eventually, and we can tell ourselves that every single day. But we also have to be okay with taking a hiatus from whatever it is that isn't either serving us or isn't succeeding. And I wrote about, you were talking about, we need to know when to quit. I wrote about this recently about how I quit, but I didn't give up. And that's the difference.
Totally different. And I think we equate them. I think we say quitting is giving up, and those are not synonymous. Those are not synonymous. And also to what the story you just told is sometimes you have to put one thing on hiatus. It doesn't mean your whole life. Right. Sometimes one area needs to go dormant and another area needs to be growing, and you need to do that. I also want to talk about the personal thing when you're like, okay, I didn't open my laptop for 6 weeks, but I did what my family needed, is at the end of this life.
Yeah.
Are you going to miss that money you didn't make for 6 weeks, or are you going to regret the time you didn't spend with the family? So I understand people need to pay bills. I'm not disputing that, but we're not trying to necessarily race to the grave with the most money in our pockets. We're trying to have the breadth and depth of life and it encompass all of that. So if the best thing you can do for 6 weeks is keep the lights on, but you've invested in this other deeply meaningful way, then that's its own type of wealth. And I'm not minimizing that people need to pay their bills, but I think we need to also redefine what wealth is. And it's not always in the account. Sometimes it's in the actions that we do, right? And so sometimes dormancy in business is harvest in personal.
Well, and the other thing to that too is that we make some of the lessons, the biggest lessons we learn is when we take the time to learn from the things that are hard. Like I know to take that time for those 6 weeks because of the other things I've experienced in my life. Right. So I know better than to go head down and I'm going to work and I'm going to launch this thing no matter what and it's going to be okay. I knew exactly what I needed to do. And I think that sometimes if we face a tragedy in our lives, a difficulty, a challenge that affects our ability to earn a living or build a business or start something new or finish something we've started, I think that sometimes we get really overwhelmed by, what do I do in this situation? And really, if you listen to your gut and your heart, you know what to do. You just have to do it.
Yeah, I was just saying to check in. I like that. I love the season analogy, and I keep coming back to it. Is check into what season it feels like. What does it feel like? Do you need to? What do you need? Right. So again, when I go back to this, different analogies work for different people. But do you need to be fertilized?
Yeah.
So dormant, right? Do you need to give up some of your stuff? So that's a little bit part of the harvest, right? You picture an apple tree and it's full of apples. It needs to give up some apples, right? And so, and we do know it, but what happens is we let external impacts come through. Like, well, it's bad if I take a hiatus from my business, or it's bad if I don't open my laptop, rather than forgetting the external stuff and saying, what can I do today? I know what you're saying about keep the lights on. I know you don't necessarily mean that literally, but I still like that concept of saying, what can I do to just continue forward? Even if my step is little, what can I do to continue forward? And I think when we honor that in the bigger picture, we do better, right? And I think that because if we get burnt out, we can't do anything.
Exactly.
So if we can honor things in these moments, it's going to benefit us in the bigger picture of our business or whatever we're doing.
Let's take a quick break and we'll wrap up when we come back. We are wrapping up with you, Annie LaCroix. We're talking about business, the seasons of business, when to pivot, when to know it's time to quit. And that doesn't mean give up, but change our pace or change what we're doing, take a hiatus. Let's talk real quick and give the audience some tips about recognizing the seasons of their business, because I think you can look to your history and know how your seasons go. And if you like how that looks, you just keep doing what you're doing. But if you're wanting to make a change, maybe you're seeing that your busiest time is in the winter, and that's when you're harvesting. Maybe you're a retail business and that's when you make the most money. But what advice do you have for the people to figure out their seasons and then align their business accordingly in 3 minutes time?
Well, I think what you said is essential. Is what have you been doing? Are you listening to this and you realize I haven't had a dormancy for a while? I haven't taken a break. I haven't done anything. Are you listening to that and saying, "Oh, that resonates with me," or whatever? And look internally. So what I would say the take home for people would be is it's easy to look externally. What are other people doing? What are other businesses doing? What is social media telling me I should do? And I would say shift internally. Think about what your seasons are, what seasons you need, how they line up with what you want for your life ultimately, and honor those seasons in whatever cycle they come up for you, not in comparison to somebody else.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy. Is that what the quote is? Something like it?
Something like that.
Something like that. And so that's good advice too, because if you quiet things, and you don't have to take a week off to do that, you can spend an hour right now today and kind of look at what you've been doing and what's working and what isn't, and how you want to proceed based on that. Whether you're a business owner, maybe you're making a career change, whatever that looks like. And especially I think if you're going through a hard time outside of work, what is it, like you said, what is wealth to you, and what is, and joy is wealth. And how we live our lives, and who we spend our time with, and what efforts we make. And so all of this is good information. And so last question, just to wrap up, we have like a minute and a half to do it. When we are thinking about business and entrepreneurship, how important is it to choose something that allows for the ebb and flow of life?
Well, I think it's the most important thing. I don't know if there's anything else that is more important. That you should build your job around your life, not your life around your job.
Mm-hmm. Whatever that job is, whether you own the job or you work for someone else for the job. Yeah. And I think extreme freedom is something that we talk about a lot these days. Yeah. And that can come in different forms too. You can be a business owner, you can be an employee, and how you spend your time when you have the freedom, I think you might not always get to set your own schedule, and you might have to work times you don't want to work, but how you spend your time outside of that, I think that's a big deal too.
If your time outside is spent recovering, you got to make a change.
Yeah. Got it. Well, thank you so much, Annie, for being here. We always have great conversation. I'm going to have you back again and again and again. Thank you so much.
I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Okay.